Hey everyone, welcome to Let's Talk Sex, the place where we break the taboos and talk openly about all things sex, your questions, your curiosity, and everything in between. Before we dive in, don't forget to like this video, drop a comment with your thoughts, and hit that subscribe button so you never miss an episode. When people talk about sex, they often jump straight to technique, desire, or performance. But that skips the most important foundation. Sex is not just an act, it is an interaction between human beings with emotions, histories, expectations, fears, and needs. To understand sex in a healthy, grounded way, we need a framework that goes deeper than biology or fantasy. One such framework is the idea of the 4 C's of sex. These 4 C's help us understand what makes sexual experiences respectful, fulfilling, and safe for everyone involved. They also help us recognize when something is missing or when a situation may be unhealthy. The 4 C's are not rules meant to restrict pleasure. They are principles meant to protect dignity, trust, and well-being. The first C is consent. Consent is the foundation upon which everything else rests. Without consent, sex is not just unhealthy, it is harmful. Consent means a clear, voluntary, and informed agreement to participate in a specific sexual activity. It is not assumed, it is not owed, and it is not permanent. Consent must be given freely, without pressure, manipulation, fear, or coercion. It must be enthusiastic, not reluctant or resigned. Silence is not consent. Lack of resistance is not consent. Consent is an active choice. One of the biggest misunderstandings about consent is the idea that it is a one-time checkbox. In reality, consent is an ongoing process. Someone may consent to one activity and not another. Someone may consent one day and not the next. Someone may consent at the beginning and withdraw consent later. All of those choices are valid. Respecting consent means paying attention not only to words, but also to body language, tone, and changes in energy. It means being willing to stop, slow down, or change course without resentment or argument. Consent also requires capacity. A person must be mentally and emotionally able to make an informed decision. If someone is heavily intoxicated, asleep, unconscious, or otherwise unable to understand what is happening, they cannot give consent. True consent requires clarity of mind and freedom of choice. This is not about technicalities. It is about respect for another person's autonomy and safety. Another important part of consent is that it must be mutual. Both people should feel equally empowered to say yes or no. If one person feels they cannot say no because of fear of consequences, power imbalance, or emotional pressure, consent is compromised. This can happen in many contexts, including relationships, marriages, workplaces, or situations where one person has authority over another. Healthy sexual interactions strive to minimize power imbalances and maximize mutual agency. Consent is also deeply connected to communication, which leads to the second C. Communication is the ability to talk openly and honestly about desires, boundaries, expectations, and feelings before, during, and after sex. Many people find this uncomfortable because they were never taught how to talk about sex in a direct and respectful way. Silence and assumptions often replace clear conversations, and that silence can lead to misunderstanding, disappointment, or harm. Good sexual communication starts with knowing yourself. It is difficult to express boundaries or desires if you have never taken time to reflect on them. Communication is not just about asking for what you want. It is also about listening to what the other person wants or does not want. It involves curiosity rather than judgment. When communication is healthy, both people feel heard and respected, even when their desires do not perfectly align. Communication should not only happen in the heat of the moment. Conversations about sex are often easier and more effective when they happen outside of sexual situations, in a calm and relaxed setting. This allows people to speak honestly without pressure. It also reduces the risk of misinterpretation. Talking about boundaries beforehand helps create trust and safety, which can actually increase comfort and enjoyment later. During sex, communication can be verbal or nonverbal, but it should always be attentive. Checking in, responding to cues, and being willing to adjust shows care and respect. After sex, communication is just as important. Reflecting on how the experience felt, what worked, and what didn't, can deepen understanding and connection. Avoiding these conversations can allow small issues to grow into resentment or confusion. 4. Communication also includes being honest about things that may affect the other person, such as sexual health status, emotional availability, or intentions. Withholding important information is a form of dishonesty that can undermine trust. While vulnerability can feel risky, it is essential for building genuine intimacy. The third concept is commitment. Commitment does not necessarily mean a long-term relationship or exclusivity, but it does mean taking responsibility for the impact of your actions. Commitment is about showing up with integrity and honoring the agreements you make, whether explicit or implied. It is about recognizing that sexual encounters can have emotional, psychological, and sometimes physical consequences. In committed relationships, this C often involves loyalty, reliability, and emotional presence. In more casual or short-term encounters, commitment may look different, but it is still present. It might mean being honest about the nature of the relationship, respecting boundaries, and not making promises you do not intend to keep. Commitment is about alignment between words and actions. A lack of commitment can lead to confusion and hurt, especially when expectations are mismatched. For example, if one person is emotionally invested and the other is not, but this difference is never acknowledged, pain is likely to follow. Clear communication helps here, but commitment requires follow-through. Saying one thing and doing another erodes trust. Commitment also involves accountability. If mistakes are made, commitment means acknowledging them, apologizing when appropriate, and learning from them. It means caring about how your behavior affects the other person, even after the sexual interaction has ended. Walking away without regard for impact reflects a lack of commitment to ethical interaction. The fourth C is care. Care is the emotional and human element that ties everything together. It is about empathy, kindness, and consideration for the other person's well-being. Care recognizes that sex involves vulnerability. Even when sex is casual, people are still human beings with feelings, insecurities, and needs. Care shows up in small but meaningful ways. It is present when someone checks in about comfort, respects boundaries without complaint, and responds to emotions with patience rather than dismissal. It is present when someone avoids using another person purely as a means to an end. Care does not require romantic love. but it does require basic human decency. When care is present, sex becomes more than a physical exchange. It becomes an interaction grounded in mutual respect. Care helps create a sense of safety, which allows people to relax and be more fully themselves. Without care, even technically consensual sex can feel empty, transactional, or harmful. Care also extends beyond the moment itself. It includes how people treat each other afterward, how they speak about each other, and how they hold the experience in memory. Disrespectful behavior after sex can be just as damaging as disrespect during it. Care means understanding that sexual experiences can linger emotionally and acting accordingly. Together, these 4 C's form a holistic approach to sexual ethics and fulfillment. Consent ensures choice and autonomy. Communication builds understanding and trust. Commitment creates reliability and accountability. Care brings empathy and humanity into the experience. When all 4 are present, sex is far more likely to be healthy, respectful, and meaningful. Many problems around sex arise not from desire itself, but from the absence of one or more of these principles. Recognizing which C is missing can help people understand why a situation feels wrong or unsatisfying. It can also guide better choices in the future. These principles are not about perfection. They are about intention and effort. As people grow and change, their understanding of these C's may deepen. What felt acceptable at one stage of life may feel different later on. That evolution is natural. What matters is a willingness to reflect, learn, and act with integrity. Sexual maturity is not about experience alone. It is about awareness and responsibility. This framework can also be used to educate younger generations, helping them develop a healthier relationship with sex from the beginning. Teaching the 4 C's emphasizes respect rather than fear, and empowerment rather than shame. It shifts the conversation from "don't do this" to "here's how to engage responsibly and respectfully." Sex is a powerful part of human life, but it does not exist in isolation. It is connected to emotions, identity, and relationships. The 4 C's remind us that sexual choices matter, not because sex is something to be controlled, but because people matter. When we center consent, communication, commitment, and care, we honor both ourselves and others. It's important to understand that the 4 C's are not abstract ideals meant only for discussion. They are practical tools that can be applied in real situations, real relationships, and real moments of uncertainty. Many people only realize the importance of these principles after experiencing confusion, regret, or harm. Learning them proactively allows individuals to make choices that align with their values, rather than reacting to consequences afterward. As people move through different stages of life, their relationship with sex often changes. Early experiences may be driven by curiosity, social pressure, or the desire for validation. Later experiences may be influenced by emotional connection, long-term partnership, or self-awareness. The 4 C's adapt to these stages because they are flexible rather than rigid. Consent, communication, commitment, and care look different for a teenager than they do for a married adult, but the core meaning remains the same. One of the most powerful aspects of this framework is that it places responsibility on everyone involved, not just one party. Sex is not something that happens to someone. It is something people participate in together. This shared responsibility encourages mutual respect, and discourages blame shifting. Instead of asking, "Did someone do something wrong?" the better question becomes, "Were the 4Cs present? If not, where did things break down?" In many cultures, sex education focuses heavily on risk avoidance, such as pregnancy or disease prevention, while neglecting emotional and ethical dimensions. While physical safety is crucial, emotional safety matters just as much. The 4Cs fill this gap by addressing the human side of sexual interaction. They encourage people to think not only about what they want, but also about how their actions affect others. Consent, for example, is often taught as a legal concept rather than a relational one. But in everyday life, consent is less about rules and more about awareness. It is about being attuned to another person's comfort and readiness. This awareness requires empathy and presence. It means noticing hesitation and taking it seriously. It means valuing the other person's experience as much as your own. Communication supports this awareness by making the invisible visible. Many conflicts around sex arise because people expect others to read their minds. Clear communication removes guesswork. It allows people to express needs without shame and boundaries without fear. While these conversations may feel awkward at first, they often lead to deeper trust and confidence over time. Commitment, in its broadest sense, challenges the idea that sex is consequence-free. Even when pregnancy or disease is not a concern, emotional consequences still exist. People may form attachments, expectations, or memories that last far longer than the physical act. Commitment asks individuals to consider whether they are willing to carry the responsibility of those outcomes. It does not demand permanence, but it does demand honesty. Care ensures that this responsibility is exercised with compassion. Care prevents people from treating sex as a transaction or a performance. It reminds us that vulnerability deserves gentleness. Care does not mean sacrificing your own boundaries or desires. It means balancing them with consideration for the other person. When care is present, even difficult conversations can be handled with respect. Another important aspect of the 4Cs is that they apply equally to oneself. Self-consent matters. This means checking in with your own motivations and readiness. Are you saying yes because you genuinely want to, or because you feel pressured? Are you communicating honestly with yourself about your needs? Are you committed to your own well-being? Are you treating yourself with care? Ignoring these questions can lead to self-betrayal, which often shows up later as regret or emotional distress. The 4Cs also help dismantle harmful myths about sex. One common myth is that talking about sex ruins spontaneity. In reality, clarity often enhances comfort, which can increase enjoyment. Another myth is that caring too much makes someone weak or needy. In truth, care reflects emotional maturity and strength. A third myth is that commitment limits freedom. When understood properly, commitment actually creates freedom by reducing uncertainty and fear. In relationships, these principles can serve as a compass during conflict. When sexual issues arise, instead of assigning blame, couples can ask which C needs attention. Perhaps communication has broken down, or expectations around commitment were never clarified. Perhaps care has been overshadowed by routine or stress. Addressing the root issue is far more effective than arguing about surface-level behavior. In casual encounters, the 4Cs are just as relevant. Casual does not mean careless. Consent must still be clear. Communication must still be honest. Commitment still involves respecting agreed-upon boundaries. Care still requires basic empathy. Casual sex that ignores these principles often leads to misunderstandings or emotional harm, not because casual sex is inherently wrong, but because it was handled without responsibility. The 4 C's can also guide recovery after negative sexual experiences. When someone feels hurt or confused, examining which C was missing can provide clarity and validation. This understanding can be empowering, helping individuals recognize that their discomfort is not a personal flaw, but a response to unmet needs or violated principles. Healing often begins with naming what went wrong. Education systems, families, and communities can use this framework to foster healthier conversations about sex. Instead of relying on fear-based messages or moral judgments, the 4 C's encourage critical thinking and self-respect. They equip people with language to articulate their experiences and advocate for themselves. This approach supports both prevention and empowerment. It is also important to acknowledge that practicing the 4 C's is not always easy. Social norms, power dynamics, trauma, and lack of education can make it challenging. Mistakes happen. What matters is a willingness to learn and do better. Growth comes from reflection, accountability, and compassion for oneself and others. As society continues to evolve, conversations about sex are becoming more open. But openness alone is not enough. Without grounding principles, openness can turn into confusion or exploitation. The 4 C's provide structure without rigidity. They allow for diversity of experiences while maintaining a shared ethical foundation. Ultimately, the 4 C's of sex remind us that sexuality is not just about desire, but about a connection. Whether that connection is brief or long-lasting, it carries meaning because it involves people. By honoring consent, communication, commitment, and care, individuals can engage in sexual experiences that align with their values and contribute positively to their lives. Sex does not have to be perfect to be healthy. It does not have to look the same for everyone. What it does need is intention. The 4 C's offer a way to bring that intention into practice. They invite us to slow down, pay attention, and act with respect. In doing so, they transform sex from something that merely happens into something that is consciously chosen and responsibly shared. When people internalize these principles, they often find that their confidence increases. They feel more secure saying yes or no. They experience fewer regrets and more clarity. They build relationships, whether short-term or long-term, that are based on honesty rather than assumption. This is not because the 4 C's eliminate risk, but because they replace ignorance with awareness. In the end, the 4 C's are not about control or restriction. They are about freedom grounded in responsibility. They affirm that pleasure and ethics are not opposites, but partners. When sex is guided by consent, communication, commitment, and care, it becomes an expression of respect for oneself and for others. That respect is what allows sexual experiences to be not only enjoyable, but also meaningful and human. Thanks for watching, and I hope you had as much fun learning as I did talking about it. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to stay connected. Share your thoughts or questions down below, and let's keep the conversation going. Catch you in the next video. Let's talk sex.